From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in London, and England's men hold the 50-over World Cup crown and also now the T20 World Cup after the tournament reached its climax at the iconic Melbourne Cricket Ground last weekend. I wouldn't say the country stopped for the final. I think many factors around that. I mean, it made the sports news, not the main news so much. I think even when Ben Stokes was asked, how does it compare to 2019, he was... I think he was realistic that 2019 was the really big one. But for the cricket fans, it was a victory to savour. England's men's team in white ball all conquering now, and an absolute victory to savour.
G'day, Brett Sprigg in Sydney. But there's still a lot to happen here in Australia. The test matches are around the corner. The Women's Big Bash League wraps up. The men's one days against England off the back of that World Cup win. And I've got about 4 or 5 different accreditation passes I have to take to the various competitions and grounds, and trying to remember which pass to take on any given day when you're so busy covering all these different events. It can be tricky, but it's a good problem to have.
Alison, I haven't seen you smile that wide in a long, long time. Congratulations. But this is Charu Sharma from Bangalore. I'm back home after a wonderful trip to Melbourne with some bragging rights, by the way, because our Old Mayor team beat the Old Wesley team to retain the silverware. All the special mention of Rick Morris, the captain of the Old Wesley cricket team, because he was so fabulously hospitable, almost like an Indian, really, as we've called him now. But I know we've got, bigger things to talk about, a slightly different grade of cricket, but we had a wonderful trip. And Alison, the one reason that maybe didn't make too much news in England is because, you still have to get used to the concept that there are 120 balls in another grade of cricket.
It sounds like you had a great time in Melbourne, Charu. Undoubtedly, you would have had. And Brett, I'll be seeing you in Australia very soon. Good to have you on the show. I'll be back over to work on the test summer for ABC, so looking forward to that. There is only one place we can start this week's show, and that is the incredible final that saw England's men win the T20 World Cup, beating Pakistan by 5 wickets at the MCG to become double world champions. Now, chasing 138, they did look in a bit of trouble, England, at 84 for 4. But Ben Stokes was the match winner once again, like he was in the 2019 50-over World Cup final. And his inspiring 52 guided England to victory. He was unbeaten. Earlier this week, I caught up with Tamal Mills, who was part of the England squad, and asked him just what it feels like to have come home with a World Cup winner's medal.
Yeah, first of all, it was great to be home. I was on a flight pretty much 6 hours, 7 hours after the final. Had something to get home for, but it's been great. Thank you. It's nice to be home. It was a great kind of 6 weeks, really. It was it's something that I'm sure I'll look back upon in kind of months and years to come, really, really fondly. But obviously, the cricket went well and was able to obviously win the tournament. But yeah, as a group, we had a really, really good 6 weeks. It was a great kind of group of lads, both on and off the pitch, and obviously it's even better when you go all the way and win it.
Well, tell me about your experience then of being away from home when it's a little boy, isn't it, when your son was born?
Yeah, we had a little boy when we were in Perth. So he was born, I think, the day or 2 days before the first group match against Afghanistan. It was tricky. I had a lot of well wishes from the boys, which was great. But yeah, it was strange. I was kind of just sat in my hotel room in Perth waiting for my mother-in-law to call me to say, obviously, and FaceTime me to tell me everything had kind of gone on and everything was fine, which it was, which was great. You feel a bit helpless and a bit useless. And obviously, from the next few days, I'm just wanting to call all the time and things. But understandably, my wife's obviously a bit out of it for a few days, and obviously struggling along with the baby. And but no, I'm glad to be home. It's nice, obviously, to meet my son when I got home, and at least we brought him home a World Cup winners medal. You were playing at sort of supporting role during the World Cup, perhaps came close to playing when there was the injury to Mark Wood towards the end. What sort of approach, sort of mentality do you need to take when you're not in the 11 at the forefront of matches in a World Cup like this? The team's doing well. Tell us about that role and how you have to approach that to remain motivated and to still be a really important part of the squad. Yeah, look, it's tricky, and I'm sure every player would agree. You don't grow up, or you don't have dreams and aspirations of being, on the bench when your team wins a World Cup. We all grow up and dream of, hitting those winning runs, taking the wickets, taking the catches that win games of cricket and win tournaments. And, I'm no different in that respect. I obviously would have loved to have been out there playing and really contributing on the field. But, obviously it wasn't meant to be for myself and David Willey, who didn't get a game either. But, we've, as I mentioned at the start of the interview, we've got such a great group. You really do share kind of success with everybody else, and that can be maybe a bit of a cliche, and people might not believe that, but you really did care for one another, and we were made. Even though, say, Dave and I and Phil Salt and Chris Jordan, who kind of were initially out of the team, we genuinely did feel part of the 11, even though we weren't in it. But yeah, we just trained hard. We trained, obviously, prepared to play every game, and obviously you need to be ready should an opportunity come up. Then obviously when Woody unfortunately got injured, it was obviously going to be one of CJ, myself, or Dave that came into the 11, and obviously they went for CJ and it worked out well. So that's there's no qualms there. But look, we just trained really hard, and we did I guess the only bad bit about it is that kind of we have to do running after the games are finished. So as soon as the matches, so we didn't in the final.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, no, we certainly weren't running shuttles after the final and MCG, but yeah, after every game we had to do like a running session just to get obviously some miles in the legs. But it was all good fun.
So just relive for us, will you, the final sort of passage of the tournament, because a lot of players will often say it's harder when you can't affect what's happening out in the middle. What was it like for you and the rest of the team, sort of watching Ben Stokes help the side get over the line?
Yeah, it was a nervous bench. Obviously Pakistan bowled really well. Obviously we bowled really well at the start, so to chase 130 odd, we were very confident of chasing it. Obviously we knew we had to go out there and do a job, but obviously we lost early wicket when Halsey got out, and then as I said, credit to Pakistan, they bowled really well. I thought Naseem Shah bowled kind of one of the better wicketless spells that you're likely to see. Bowled some really good balls. The ball was nipping around quite a bit. The pitch was quite spicy, which as a bowler you like to see. And there's obviously it got closer than what we would have liked it to have got. Obviously it's one of those you'd love to knock it off in the 17th over, or 16th over, something like that. But it got a little bit nippy towards the end. Adil Rashid came and sat next to me on the bench, and he couldn't look. Bless him, he had a lot of nervous energy. So I was just trying to be there for him, just to kind of keep him level, because he was up and down. He had members of the coaching staff kind of getting. You could tell there was definite shift, that there wasn't on the bench. Sorry, there was a different atmosphere than there wasn't in the group games, obviously, because with it being such a massive game, there was more nerves on the bench than normal. But I like to pride myself and think I'm quite a calm, level character, so I tried my best to keep everybody as level as I could around my little area on the bench. But Adil took a little bit of calming down, more so than usual, I'd say.
And a final thought, how do you see the relationship between Jos Buttler and Matthew Motts since they've come together, and the way that they both go about things? I mean, is Jos sort of more the leader when it comes to the overall sort of who's in charge? How is that relationship, and how did that play out over the course of the tournament?
Yeah, I think it has it peaked at the right time. I think obviously we had a rough start of it in the summer. We lost quite a few games to India and South Africa. We had different kind of makeups of the teams and things then as well. And then I read that Jos mentioned that time they spent in Pakistan was obviously really key to. Obviously, I wasn't there; I was coming back from injury, but for the team, and I'm sure for the kind of relationship between those two and the management and the team, the staff as well. I certainly see Jos as the leader of the side, in a similar way that Morgie was as well. Again, I'm sure Jos just been finding his particular way to kind of go about it and settle into it. But as I mentioned earlier, I can't speak enough of the environment that was created. Even though we had quite a few Australians in the coaching staff, obviously with Mike Hussey and David Saker there. Honestly, we had a really good time. Obviously it helps. We were doing well at the cricket side of it. That obviously makes things a lot easier. But for 6 weeks, we thoroughly enjoyed everybody's company, and then we were just constantly reminded. Jos kept saying how good we are, how we have some of the best players in the world, and if we if we perform to close to our potential in every game that we play, then not many teams can live with us. So Josh just kept kind of bringing it back to that, and I think that kind of went through to the rest of the boys.
Well, congratulations again, Tamal, and enjoy the time at home, won't you? Good luck with those night feeds.
Yeah, thank you very much. Cheers, Ellie.
Great to have you on Stumped. Well, Brett, we haven't had you on Stumped since during the World Cup even, so I'm intrigued to sort of see what you made of the tournament as a whole. You've been at a lot of the matches.
Yeah, loved it. Look, England obviously deserved winners. I thought our semi-finals, while perhaps lacking in competitiveness, delivered two emphatic performances, which really built to an intriguing final. Obviously, in the end, Pakistan left about 15, 20 runs out there, which was the difference in the end. England deserves that bit of history. What I loved, though, about this event, there was disappointment collectively about Australia's team and Australia's crowds, but really, and the washouts as well. But everyone's got different theories as to why the Australian public seems to have gone a bit cold on the Australian men's cricket team, whether it's, I guess, some long-term fallout from Cape Town or Justin Langer's departure, the way that was handled, or Pat Cummins having a social or environmental conscience. People have their own sort of ideas about that. But this World Cup was about every other team. The crowds for India were amazing, obviously. We expect that. I haven't seen Pakistan fans take over a stadium in quite the way they did. We saw it on smaller scales with Afghanistan and Bangladesh as well. This was a celebration of different cultures, and the first time in a few years we've actually had the chance to really do that. But this was extraordinary, just seeing a lot of our first and second generation Australians supporting their country of origin, and lots of travellers, of course, as well, which really brought the atmosphere to this World Cup. That was the highlight for me.
Charu, on that final, I mean, it was a real turning point, wasn't it, when Shaheen Shah Afridi went off injured for Pakistan?
For sure. But I think Brett's mentioned a very important point a little earlier on. As we all know, they were at least 15, 20, if not more runs short. So to try and defend a total that's barely just over a run a ball, it has to be an extraordinary bowling effort. And we know that Pakistan, especially their fast bowlers, and Shadab as well, did have a fabulous bowling lineup. But a little bit of desperation does come in once in a while, seeps in, because, you need a wicket virtually every second over. Because if you don't get the wickets, somebody's going to make the other side in a final is certainly going to make 130 and change. Because there's no real pressure. Yes, we know that Talisman made, a fabulous half century once again. But to Pakistan's credit, they defended that low total with as much zeal as possible. And you are right, if Shaheen Shah Afridi, who is their spearhead, and of course came in with an injury and then got fairly, I suppose, fit enough to play a few games, had he stayed on the last 1 or 2 overs, who knows? Because if Stokesy had gone, then as Tamal Mills mentioned, there was a fair amount of nerves in the dugout, and the death overs could easily have gone Pakistan's way. So a reasonable defense of a very low total, but it was never going to be enough.
When we were recording the show last week, it was in the middle of the England-India semi-final, wasn't it? Which feels like eons ago now already. What has been the fallout in India to that? And it was a remarkable victory for England, with the flip side being, it was really quite India were well beaten.
Sorry, what match again? Just I mean, more than despair, another word. I mean, there's always disappointment. Losing a match and losing it really badly is what sets the critics, sort of gives them a platform, a throne. And the criticism was massive across India. We've got about 1.4 billion selectors, and each one was out with his or her own selection about, why so-and-so and why not so-and-so and all that. But I'm sorry, I'm being a little idealistic here, but you need to support your team regardless. I think the best 15 or so went to represent India in the T20 World Cup in Australia. I suppose the only person who got away scot-free was Virat Kohli, because he did have a fabulous T20 World Cup campaign, despite the fact that for the past 3 years, he'd copped a lot of criticism, not having done very much at all. But yeah, I mean, the criticism was pretty excessive. And one has to just understand the critic's viewpoint, because you would like a close match. When you get smashed, a 10-wicket loss is very tough to bear for even the staunchest fan.
And Michael Vaughan's been quite outspoken, as he often is, the former England captain, saying that he sees that the Indian team as the most underperforming team in white ball history. And they did win the very first T20 World Cup, of course, which spawned the IPL. But What did you make of their performance?
I think in much the same way that we marvel at associate nations and talk about how they punch above their weight, here we have a cricket superpower with seemingly unlimited resources and capability that hasn't won a major trophy since 2011. It is a hard thing to define or explain, Charu, and I'd probably yield to your expertise here. But in Ordnance, you talk about teams that neglect their traditional pathways in favour of the commerce and the money, expanding that franchise league. But I think in this case, the continued expansion of the IPL or continued growth of the IPL and IPL clubs will help India to its next World Cup sooner rather than later. You've got more talent scouts, more opportunity to find the next Jasprit Bumrah, the next Hardik Pandya, and those players will still make their way into the Indian system. I guess the one thing you can't buy is mindset. And at various times in these big games, India just forgot how to play cricket. They abandoned their attacking mindset and looked a little too defensive or tentative. But India is a proud and patriotic country. Someone will figure out how to shake off that sort of choker's tag, if you like, in big events and galvanise them.
He's late for chokers.
Well, there might be a word that gets thrown around, but there would be a thought that they haven't capitalised in the business end of big tournaments. But I think that's not too far away.
The most obvious comparison, Alison, is the English Premier League football. I can't remember England winning, World Cup after World Cup of football, despite the fact that their commercial circles in football are massive, humongous, more than the IPL.
Very true.
So, money doesn't guarantee anything. I mean, there are lots of fabulous players. You have one bad match in a knockout stage, you're out of a tournament. It's happened to all the best countries, England included. They didn't win the World Cup for ages, if you remember, the ODI World Cup, and everyone saying, well, England can't win the World Cup, and eventually they did. And Australia too. I mean, they were out a lot earlier. So, Brett, they are probably the best team in the world on any given day, and yet they didn't even make the semis. So, what right does India, 1.4 billion people, expect India to win every T20 match they play in? And, of course, if you have to win World Cups, you probably have to win just about every T20 match you play in. So that's unfair in terms of expectation. I think it's still a pretty good team. They could have won the World Cup, one better match in the semis. Who knows? Because England, too, if you go back and look at the Irish loss that you were talking about, Alison, I mean, at that stage, I'm sure the English critics were out saying, what kind of team have we sent to Australia when you go on and win? And you say, oh, wow, what a team. So there you go.
Well, it'd be a very boring landscape if one team dominated and won everything. I mean, in the women's game, everyone's crying out for Australia to be challenged at the top because they have been winning everything for so many years. But yep, you're absolutely right about the England football team, Charu. Let's see what happens in Qatar. Well, that is all we've got time for on this week's Stumped here on All India Radio. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter. We're at BBCWS Sport. Use the hashtag BBC Stumped so we see your message. And check us out on YouTube as well. Go to the BBC World Service's YouTube channel. You'll find us there. Thanks to Charu Sharma and Brett Sprigg and to all of you. See you next week. Bye-bye.
From the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.